So just to put in context, if you haven't seen it play, T. Higgins catches a ball moving kind of across the field, and Damar comes up and tackles him. He's kind of in an upright position, like he knows he's going to have to like chase T. Higgins, but T kind of like lowers his shoulder and kind of goes into his body and kind of goes down on top of him. And Damar rolls up like no problem. And then like a moment or so pauses, and he basically collapses to the ground. And we know now that he was in cardiac arrest at that point. The tackle, there did not seem, in watching hours of football every year, like did not seem to be anything remarkable about it. Where you'd say, man, that's good. Somebody's going to be hurting that tackle. The fact that he got up like immediately, like you would in any other circumstance, was also made it feel like it was normal. And so there's, again, it's probably going to be a medical decision or diagnosis to what exactly happened. But my instinct was that there may be some sort of cardiac issue with him, maybe an arrhythmia or something like that was triggered perhaps by the contact or just the exertion of playing in that moment. I don't know. I mean,
his uncle now telling us his heart stopped twice, once on the field and then once when the ambulance arrived there at the hospital. Tonight, he is at UC Medical Center, where he was last listed in critical condition.
He's still sedated right now. They just want him to have a better chance of recovering better. So they felt that if he's sedated, his body can heal a lot faster than if he was woke and possibly cause other complications. And we're just taking it day by day. Seems like he's trending upwards in a positive way.
And he also said he is using about 50% of the oxygen that they were first giving him. So all of that is encouraging him. His uncle saying there was some damage to his lungs, though, after several minutes of chest compressions, which is pretty common, we're told. He's currently on a ventilator to help him breathe and to take some strain off of his lungs.
And now they're saying it may have had something to do with his lungs, like his lungs may have collapsed, things like that. That's why he had a lot of trouble breathing. And a matter of fact, he had needed help breathing, so they had him on, like, even when they transported him to the hospital.
Well, yeah, but one of the issues that you have is when you go into cardiac arrest, they're using the pads and they're using the compressions, and that alone can fracture ribs, can damage lungs, bruise chest, sternum, and things like that. Especially when you're talking about having, CPR compressions over an extended period of time, which I'm sure he did. So, I think it's his uncle was interviewed recently, and he did acknowledge there was some injuries to his lungs, but that seemed to be primarily from the CPR that was performed, once he went down. Again, you watch sports, you don't want to see people injured, but in football, it's going to happen. It's just a reality of the game. And, you hope there's not a catastrophic injury. But in some way, if you're somebody who watches a lot of football, you tend to recognize certain injuries. You recognize the non-contact guy has a knee injury. You recognize a guy pulling up with an Achilles. You recognize situations where concussions are likely. What's so shocking in what happened to Damar is the heart attack. That's not something there is precedent for it. It's happened. In fact, and I didn't know this until our good friend Will Lee posted it. An NFL player died in a game of cardiac arrest in 1971. My understanding is the only time that's happened. So it's not completely unprecedented, but certainly not something you see on a week-to-week basis. And the way a player reacts in cardiac arrest, it was shocking to see. And the players were shaken up, everyone in the stadium was, and so many people watching this unfold at home, like, didn't know how to react and so forth.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you look at sports and you look at guys, right? And I'm going to play the clip from Damar's uncle in a second here. But when we take a look at it, like, just, guys in everyday life, me, you, every other guy, play fantasy football, we go to the gym, things like that, all the guys in the world. If you really pay attention, even the wildest, craziest, looniest of guys who we don't listen to and having conversations with anyhow, they don't talk about football in the same vein that they do other sports, like as far as the athletes, right? Like you get guys talking about basketball players. Oh, Rondo, he's a bum. He can't shoot. You get me talking about Ben Simmons. You get, and you get that about with baseball. I hear guys talk about that with soccer and those in that lane. And sometimes even in boxing, even though boxing is dangerous, I get that from boxing sometimes. Like people talk about Floyd Mayweather, how soft his punches are and stuff like that. But in football, I don't hear that. I don't hear guys talk about that the same way. Like I don't hear them talk about. And I think a lot of that comes from a lot of us tried real football back in the day.
Yeah.
And so we know first of all how dangerous it is and how hard it is. And 90% of those guys wouldn't be able to like have those type of conversations because they're terrible. And in comparison, I'm not an NBA guy, never couldn't dream of it, right? But, one day in the gym, I'm there during one of Juan's runs, and our guy from the Trailblazers is there, Anthony Simons.
Yeah.
I'm on his team. That's my best shooting night I've ever had in my entire life. And so in your head, you get, crazy ideas. Do I need to try out from the 76ers? So, but NFL, that doesn't happen. I think we know like deep down inside, like this game is dangerous and it's hard.
It's
can
different.
happen.
It's different. And we said this before, like, okay, you could play a basketball in high school, you could play college, you could even play at a professional level, and then that can end for you. But you could still continue to have a meaningful basketball experience, and that's what me and you have. We play a couple times a week or whatever. You cannot. I mean, there's just no situation where people are strapping pads on and playing full contact football. I mean, if your football ends in high school, that's it. If you get to college, it ends there. And if you're one of the few that make the NFL and you step away from that game, that's it. You're never putting the pads on again. I played Pop Warner football. I played like 5 years of Pop Warner football. My final game, and I'll never forget, was in Eatonville, and it was in the field's been taken down essentially, but you could see it on I-4 just in Eatonville where they would have the Zora Neil Hurston Festival. From Danbury, Connecticut, that's where I played my last full pad contact game. Never forget that, But I knew it. Once I chose not to play in high school, I was never going to play again.
Right.
It is a different game. It takes a different mentality to play the game. What was a really eye-opening experience for me when I think I was like in middle school or something. We went to see an Army football game at West Point, and I was playing Pop Warner, and you kind of think that you play hard or you think you can hit a little bit. And I remember going in, and this is basically low-level Division I football, and watching the game with good seats, you're like, God damn, these guys play. I mean, like, they're fearless. Like, the contact, it's full speed, the pace, everything's moving, the thumping there, it's just different. And I remember distinctly thinking, just watching that, like, there's not a lot of people cut out for this.
No,
there's just not. And you elevate that to the higher D1, to the NFL, and what those guys do, what they can do, and what they're willing to do. It's different, man. It is a whole. I mean, you really have to have the utmost respect for anybody that plays football at a high level, for that like personal fear thing.
No, for sure. Now, I guess you could say not unfortunate, but uncomfortable for some. The conversation, it has to switch to, okay, when is this game going to be replayed? Or, what is the NFL going to do, and what's next? There was a lot riding on that game, and for seeding purposes, when the NFL added a third playoff team, which this is the first year it's set up that way, that means there's only one seed, one team from each conference that gets a bye. That gets a playoff bye.
Yep.
And the Buffalo Bills were in the catbird seat for that number one bye. All they had to do was win, and they're in. They
locked that down.
They would have locked it down. So now if this game is not replayed, right, which in my opinion is the easiest way for the NFL to do this, if they just, cancel the game or whatever, you can treat it as a tie, or cancel. That would mean all the Kansas City Chiefs have to do is beat the Oakland Raiders team and then a Las Vegas Raiders team, and then they get the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah.
So that is tough. So what the Bills, the players from both teams, the players and coaching staff, they moved and they wanted that game to be canceled, right? So the NFLPA, the players, they wanted that game to be canceled. No one can blame them. It was a devastating event there. But what do you do about this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to touch base later with Skip Bayless, but I mean, I would be dishonest as I'm watching this unfold. You're hoping that Damar's going to be okay or survive whatever's going on at that moment. But there was a part when this is happening live. I'm like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to try to play? Are they going to make a decision to not play? And if they make a decision to not play, what is the implication of this? Because these are two teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Seeding could be significant. There could be a trickle-down effect on the outcome of this game with other seeds in other teams that aren't directly involved in that. Like you said, the Chiefs now could potentially benefit from this. And at the end of the day, the league is a business, and it's a business based on competitiveness.
Yeah.
And when, sad to say, I mean, in a couple weeks when we're in the midst of the playoffs, this is going to matter to some people.
Yeah.
Do I have a bye? Am I playing at home, or do I have to travel now to somebody else's stadium when all this is on the line? And it's not to say that a person's life or the potential loss of their life doesn't matter. It certainly does. But there's also a context that all these things happen in that has to be to be dealt with, and in some way, there has to be some sort of fair outcome to this.
Yeah.
So that so that everyone is so the playoffs preserve their integrity, and essentially the season does.
Exactly. And yeah, it's tough to have it this way. The Buffalo Bills have one of the most competitive home field advantages in the NFL, period, entirely. Just because of the weather when it gets around this time of the year, those guys are so acclimated. Josh Allen has probably the strongest arm in the league, so he is just an advantage for that team.
They have a rabid fan base too.
And they have a
rabid. Really get into it.
They really get into it. Negative 30-degree weather is not going to deter them from showing up and selling out the game, the stadium. So it's a lot of moving parts. Now, if they don't cancel the game, they don't count it as a tie. The other options are there is essentially a bye week, right, for the NFL. They use for, now they're calling it Pro Bowl activities. They're going to do these, throwing and running and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not a game anymore. So you do have that week. They could flex it to that week. Now, that would mean that they're playing every, the teams don't get that bye. All the other teams get that week off. They're going to be playing. So there'll be the only two. It'll be the only two teams playing. That's do you think that's fair? So there's different things. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody in the league office is hoping that maybe the Chiefs lose to the Raiders, and so there's maybe no actual consequence to this game, and it could just be declared a void game, and the seedings fall as they otherwise would.
If you're the Chiefs, do you consider that
losing the game?
Yeah.
No, it's business is winning.
Yeah.
You need to put it on the Raiders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. That's your job. These are your aspirations.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat Mahomes is trying to stack Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He's going to want every advantage he can.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's certainly a tragic event, and in the context that it occurred, during a game, it's going to impact everybody.
It is. Once again, you guys are on the bench podcast with Bubba and Pink. We're available on all podcast streaming platforms, including here on YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Excuse me here. Now, throughout all of this madness, you had something.
No, the only thing that just kind of drifted into my head, but it's not really applicable because there was no competitive significance to it. But when the three Virginia players lost their lives in a shooting, You know,
Yeah.
Virginia basically canceled the rest of their football season, and the NCAA awarded everybody in that program an extra year of eligibility. And you don't really have that option with the NFL and with these being playoff teams.
No, you lose a year of your prime.
Yeah, well, you lose a year of your prime. But as far as these teams are in the playoffs now.
Yeah.
Like I mean, again, we don't want this to happen again. But like, if that event had happened at Georgia or TCU or Ohio State or Michigan,
I don't think that happens.
they wouldn't happen. I mean,
Yeah.
they would play.
Yeah.
I guarantee you to play.
Yeah.
You know.